Hey YouTube, it's me Spotty. Today we're going to be taking a look at 3 budget 3x3s to see which one might be the best for you. The puzzles we're going to be looking at today are the Qiyi Warrior W, the Kung Fu LongYuan, and the MF3 Rs from the Cubing Classroom series. All of these come under $7.50 Australian or around $5 US and perform pretty well. Let's take a look at the performance out of the box, the pros and cons of each, and then my final recommendations. So to start off, we've got the Qiyi Warrior W. Now this cube I was pretty impressed with straight up. When turning it, it didn't feel that cheap, and while performance was only decent, the stock tensions were really terrible, way too tight. So this did cut into performance, corner cutting wasn't the greatest, and the feeling was a little blocky. I did see heaps of promise though, and I thought that after some setup and breaking in, it might be a very good option for a budget cube. There also were some other things that I thought weren't fantastic. First up, the plastic was a bit frosted, kinda weird but not huge. The thing that I found more annoying was the weird shades that Qiyi chose. It's a very bright color scheme, the red almost looks pink, and overall I'm just not a fan. Note too that stickless bright is the only thing that this cube can come in. Finally, there was some pretty bad spring noise present, so some setting up would definitely do this cube some good. Next up was the Kung Fu LongYuan. This one I wasn't a huge fan right out because the puzzle felt cheap. The feeling was sandy, kinda scratchy, and the turning was very blocky. In saying that, the performance itself was good, corner cutting was good although reverse was a bit lacking, and there was a decent fluidity to turning, more so compared to the Warrior W. Finally, we had the MF3 Rs. Now this one was my favorite out of the bunch. It didn't feel super premium, but it for sure doesn't feel cheap. Plus, aesthetically, it's the most premium looking cube, with design features normally found on higher end 3x3s. Additionally, performance is fine out of the box. The corner cutting is on par with more expensive puzzles, and there just aren't too many real flaws. There is some slight catching issues that are present, but the feel is quite crunchy and overall pretty satisfying. Alright, we'll start again with the Warrior W. After playing around with it a bit, I have some pretty mixed feelings. I didn't fully set this up at first, only mildly tensioning it and then adding some weight 5 to the pieces to add some controllability. After doing so, I did around 200 solves, but as I was doing them, I found that my times were really inconsistent and I just wasn't averaging what I normally would. This came as a surprise to me because I didn't really feel as though there were any real flaws with the puzzle that would hold me back or anything of that kind. You know, performance was good, there was a fluidity to solves, there weren't any major catching or locking issues, and everything that you would expect to find on a moderately good 3x3 you found here. So I figured I might as well just try and set the whole cube up again. Now my times didn't drop instantly after doing so, but my times were getting closer to what I normally average, and that was good enough for me. But yeah, that's this puzzle, let's move on. So the Kung Fu 3x3 is next up. Similarly to the previous cube, this one wasn't fully set up first off. What I did do was dump some heavy lube into the pieces, which actually did the cube some real good. The very budget feel that this cube came with subsided, and it still feels the cheapest out of the 3 cubes here, but you know, it isn't terrible. The feeling itself is quite papery and very blocky, which isn't the most pleasant in my opinion. However, setup did improve the corner cutting, which is now a lot better, and the performance is great. The cube flows pretty well, slight catches for the most part are gone, the turning is effortless and quick while remaining very controllable, and my times are as they would be if I was using my main. And last but not least, the MF3 Rs. The performance on this is also great. There are some slight catching issues which are annoying, but overall aren't drastic and are diminished with breaking in its setup. Stability is decent, but what I love about this puzzle is that it doesn't feel cheap, but instead has some satisfying turning with a predominantly crunchy feel. As I said before, corner cutting is great, and overall this cube is definitely a keeper. So with that said, my recommendations are as follows. The Kung Fu is my top pick if your budget is really tight and you think you won't mind the blockier feel. The performance out of the box is really not bad, and the performance after breaking in is truly really nice. I would honestly be quite happy to use this cube if I needed to at a comp, and it's a very nice puzzle on a budget. Plus, you get a pretty nice orange stand. Now, if you have a couple more dollars on hand, then the MF3 Rs is the one that I'd go for. While there are some slight catching issues out of the box, and they aren't completely removed the way I set it up, my times are consistently as what I would get with my main, and the feeling is more premium compared to the Kung Fu. Performance-wise, I wouldn't say it's better or worse, it's just that the feeling I think most people would enjoy more with this puzzle. The one that I would have trouble recommending is the Warrior W. Now, the performance isn't bad on this cube, and as I've said before, it does feel more premium than the LongYuan. However, I'm really not a fan of this super obscure color scheme they've slapped on this thing, and yes, you can get used to it, but if you're used to a normal color scheme or in the future might want to get used to a normal color scheme, then this cube is just weird. I just don't think that there's really a place on the market for a budget cube that needs so much breaking in and setup to get decent, and personally I'd stay away from this one. I would not feel super confident if this was the only cube I had to compete with. But yeah, that's about it for this comparison. Hopefully this could help you out if you're in the market for a budget 3x3, and links to all 3 cubes will be in the description. Other than that though, thank you to speedcube.com.au for sending these puzzles out for me to test. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you all in the next one.